Welcome to Chapter 12 of The Case of the Clock Tower Key, a 12-part Sherlock Holmes mystery. Get comfortable, close your eyes, and let the story unfold. If you missed the previous chapter, please visit to my channel and enjoy the journey of Sherlock Holmes. Our return to Baker Street was a return to sanity, a welcome re-entry into a world governed by logic, reason, and the comforting aroma of Mrs. Hudson's freshly brewed coffee. The contrast between the familiar, cluttered warmth of our sitting room and the cold, damp, and psychologically oppressive atmosphere of the clock tower could not have been more profound. It was as if we had stepped from a dark and disturbing dream back into the solid, reassuring reality of our everyday lives. Holmes, despite the exertions of the night, seemed energized, his mind still buzzing with the intellectual stimulation of the case. He shed his dust-covered coat, lit his favorite clay pipe, and began to pace back and forth before the fire, a sure sign that he was about to embark upon one of his detailed post-case analyses. "It was a remarkable case, Watson," he began, his voice filled with an almost academic enthusiasm. "A perfect illustration of the principle that the most bizarre and seemingly supernatural events are almost always rooted in the deepest and most fundamental of human emotions. In this case, obsession, solitude, and fear." He then proceeded to give me his final philosophical analysis of the affair, a brilliant and insightful monologue that laid bare the very heart of the mystery. He spoke of the tower not as a malevolent entity, but as a kind of psychological amplifier, a place of profound isolation that had magnified and distorted the pre-existing anxieties and eccentricities of its keepers. Alistair Vance was not the first to have been driven mad by that place, he said, and Silas Croft, the horologist, was not the only one to have fled from it. The legend of the Watcher did not spring from a single ghostly apparition. It was a cumulative legend, built up over centuries, a tapestry woven from the threads of a dozen different keepers' fears and anxieties. Each man who heard the whispers, who felt the oppressive weight of the solitude, added his own small stitch to the pattern. He explained how the power of suggestion, fueled by the pre-existing legend, had become a self-fulfilling prophecy. The keepers expected to see a ghost, to hear a whisper, and so their minds, already strained by the solitude and the incessant rhythmic voice of the clock, provided them with one. "It is a classic case of what the French call an idée fixe," he continued. "A fixed idea that takes root in the mind and gradually crowds out all other, more rational thoughts. For Vance, the idea was that the clock was a living, suffering entity, and that he was its chosen savior. Once that idea had taken hold, every subsequent event, every strange noise, every shadow, was interpreted as a confirmation of his belief. His madness, Watson, was not a sudden collapse, but a slow, methodical construction, as intricate and as logical, in its own twisted way, as the clockwork mechanism he tended. As he spoke, I found myself at my writing desk, my pen flying across the page as I struggled to capture the essence of his words, to chronicle the strange and terrifying events of the past few days. The account you are now reading is the result of that effort, an attempt to provide a clear and factual record of one of the most singular and disturbing cases of my friend's long and illustrious career. "There is one small final detail that may interest you," Holmes said, pausing in his pacing to fix me with his keen grey eyes. The oil I found on the floor of the keeper's room, the oil that had been used as a medium for the belladonna. I sent a sample to be analyzed. The results came back this morning. It is a highly specialized blend, used for only one purpose: the lubrication of the delicate and complex mechanisms of astronomical clocks. He let the fact hang in the air for a moment. There is only one such clock in London, he continued. A magnificent and ancient timepiece in the possession of a private collector in Kensington. A clock that was, as it happens, serviced some 6 months ago by none other than Mr. Alistair Vance. It was a small final confirmation of my theory. Vance had not only the motive and the opportunity, but also the means to perpetrate his terrifying illusion. He was about to say more when a sound, distant and yet strangely familiar, reached us through the open window. It was a sound we hadn't heard for several days, a sound whose absence had been the catalyst for our entire adventure. It was the first chime of the St. Giles clock. Deep, resonant and clear, it rolled across the rooftops of London, a magnificent booming announcement of its own resurrection. Lestrade, it seemed, had wasted no time in dispatching a team of engineers to repair the damage and restore the clock to its former glory. One by one, the chimes rang out, marking the hour, a steady, reassuring heartbeat restored to the heart of the city. We stood there, Holmes and I, in the comfortable silence of our rooms, and listened as the last of the 12 chimes faded into the bustling noonday air of London. The sound was no longer a source of dread, a prelude to madness and terror. It was once again what it had always been, a symbol of order, of regularity, of the steady and relentless passage of time. It was a symbol of the triumph of logic over fear, of reason over the dark and tangled shadows of the human mind. Holmes smiled, a rare and gentle expression that softened the sharp, ascetic lines of his face. "All is as it should be, Watson," he said, his voice quiet and content. He then turned, picked up his violin from its case, and began to play. Not the discordant, mournful dirge of the previous days, but a soft melodic tune, a gentle and thoughtful air that seemed to be a fitting and peaceful coda to the dark and turbulent symphony of the case of the silent clock tower. The voice of the tower was restored, and with it, the balance of our world. Thank you for listening to Chapter 12 of The Case of the Clock Tower Key. If you enjoyed the mystery and want more stories like this, please subscribe to the channel, give it a like, leave a comment, and share it with fellow mystery lovers. Your support helps keep the stories alive. See you in the next story.